Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. The green pillar of light shot up into the heavens, causing everything to tremble. Even the blood chi in the area was blasted away. Instantly, the whole bloodstream sect was shaken. Middle Peak Grand Elder Song Junwan was in the middle of meditating when suddenly, her eyes opened. Shocked, she rushed out of her immortals cave to look at the green light, and quickly realized that it was coming from the holy pill wall fragment. Night Crypt is over there seeking enlightenment. Don't tell me. Heart trembling, she flew into the air. It wasn't just her, numerous beams of light sped from the various mountain peaks toward the holy pill wall fragment. There were even streams of divine sense that flowed out from Ancestor Peak. Instantly, everyone saw Bai Xiaochun, in a deep trance, expression blank. He even seemed to be somewhat intoxicated. Anybody who looked at him could tell that he was in the middle of being enlightened by the wall fragment. Every few hundred years, someone succeeds in gaining enlightenment. But nobody has ever caused green light to shoot up from the wall fragment. I remember reading in the ancient records about how the Taoist blood sage received enlightenment 8,000 years ago. Green light appeared back then. Could it be that this is the same kind of enlightenment? I can't believe Night Crypt is so gifted in the Tao of medicine. I remember him concocting medicine a few times in the past. If he can gain enlightenment from the wall fragment, then in the future, the Bloodstream sect might have another Grand Master Apothecary. It wasn't just the Prime Elders who took note of what was happening. Two pairs of eyes flashed like lightning as they looked over at Bai Xiaochun. One of them belonged to Patriarch Limitless, the other, to the Song Clan Patriarch. Strange light could be seen in those eyes, and they seemed moved. Soon, it became apparent that countless figures were converging on the wall fragment, so the Song Clan Patriarch quickly said, Song Junwan, stand as Dharma protector for Night Crypt. If anyone tries to interfere, kill them immediately. The Song Clan Patriarch's voice was as cold as ice, and rang out for all to hear. Immediately, the cultivators near Bai Xiaochun backed up, hearts pounding in fear. Some of them had actually been contemplating whether or not they should interfere, but now they pushed such thoughts aside. Song Junwan took a deep breath. Clasping hands in respect toward Ancestor Peak, she took a few steps forward and sat down cross-legged next to Bai Xiaochun to serve as Dharma protector. Other cultivators who were under the personal command of Song Junwan also sat down cross-legged, forming a wider perimeter, staring coldly at the other surrounding cultivators. With Song Junwan serving as Dharma protector, and a warning having been uttered by a patriarch, the crowd began to thin. Soon, the area was very quiet. Word spread about Night Crypt gaining enlightenment from the wall fragment. During the following month, cultivators would come on a daily basis to observe what was happening. As for Song Junwan, her eyes were increasingly bloodshot, and she also seemed in a daze, as if the only thing that existed were Bai Xiaochun and the wall fragment. Night Crypt reached inverse blood ancestral awakening, she thought, and also has terrifying abilities in divination. Now it seems he's a genius in the Tao of medicine. Lots of disciples study this wall fragment, but very few people can succeed, and even fewer provoke a reaction from the wall. Just what Tao of medicine is Night Crypt gaining enlightenment of? Her eyes glittered even more profoundly than before as she realized that yet again, her earlier assumptions about Night Crypt had been incorrect. He seemed simple enough, as if he could be judged at a single glance. However, Song Junwan had to admit that what she had seen, and what she knew, was just the tip of the iceberg. How could a person like this slip through chi condensation completely unnoticed? Did he really spend all that time building up and preparing? No matter how she considered the matter, she couldn't come up with an answer. At the same time, the gleam in her eyes as she looked at Bai Xiaochun continued to deepen. Time passed. Another month went by, and Bai Xiaochun had forgotten about himself. He was completely focused on the apothecary and his process of concocting medicine. He watched him over and over again, and the closer he examined him, the clearer the figure became. Eventually, the image turned into a different person, and soon, the concocting methods were different again. Generally speaking, theories regarding the Tao of medicine were the same. However, when it came to the plant and vegetation pills, or the pill concocting methods, they changed from person to person. The people changed, the methods changed, but the foundation was the same. A tremor ran through Bai Xiaochun as he saw one figure after another concocting medicine. Each one used the same general principles to form the exact type of medicinal strength they needed. It was as if a huge door were opening in Bai Xiaochun's mind. At a certain point, he subconsciously extended his hands and began to mimic what he was seeing inside the wall. As his hands moved, a green field of light appeared around him, which attracted the green light shining from the stone wall. Soon, the two were connected. Bai Xiaochun's mind filled with rumbling sounds as countless bodies of knowledge regarding the Tao of medicine flowed into his mind through the light. The group on Ancestor Peak was shaken, and based on the levels of their cultivation bases, they could actually sense what was happening. A legacy. No wonder the Pillstream sect has tried so hard over the years to get that wall fragment back. If the Taoist blood sage hadn't expressed his dying order to never return the wall for all eternity, it would probably have been sent back long ago. So this wall contains a legacy of the Pillstream sect's Tao of medicine. Now that I think about, doesn't the Pillstream sect also have a wall fragment? The Bloodstream sect patriarchs exchanged glances, and all of them could see how deeply moved the others were. Bai Xiaochun's mind was racked with pain as he accepted the legacy. He was left trembling, his eyes completely bloodshot, and he even cried out at the top of his lungs. However, he wasn't willing to give up. Even a glimpse at the knowledge of the Tao of medicine he was receiving was completely shocking. Use heaven and earth as the pill cauldron. Use all creation as the plants and vegetation. Bequeath soul seeds. Create medicines of good fortune. Bai Xiaochun's mind was battered by towering waves of shock. Suddenly, he thought back to the Pillstream sect disciple he'd killed, Fang Lin. The heaven-earth furnace cauldron he'd used was obviously what was referred to in the first line of the wall fragment legacy. He also thought back to what had occurred when Fang Lin died, and the face of the young man he'd seen, which resembled a yin-yang symbol. Apparently, Fang Lin had unknowingly been infected with a soul seed. 1. Fang Lin died in chapter 160. Back in the heat of the moment, Bai Xiaochun had mostly ignored that young man with the yin-yang face. However, he hadn't forgotten the incident, and had always remained suspicious about it. Now, he realized that what he had seen was a manifestation of soul seed bequeathal. Furthermore, the legacy he was receiving now was the technique of all creation plants and vegetation. Heaven earth furnace cauldron, all creation plants and vegetation, soul seed bequeathal. These three divine abilities were the fundamental Tao which served as the foundation of the Pillstream sect. Unfortunately, the Bloodstream sect had robbed them of half of their wall fragment. Perhaps the lack of the all-creation plants and vegetation technique was why the Pillstream sect had been in a state of gradual decline for so long. By using all creation as plants and vegetation, the transformations of the plants and vegetation can be used to form any type of medicinal effect. A Tao of medicine like this is unimaginable. Bai Xiaochun was panting. Never could he possibly have guessed that his attempt to pretend to get enlightenment would result in him actually receiving a legacy magic. As the legacy was passed on, the light shining up from the wall fragment grew weaker and weaker, and the green glow around him grew stronger and stronger. A few days later, the light around the wall faded, and Bai Xiaochun's eyes snapped open. The intense green light around him caused rumbling like that of thunder to echo out. At the same time, the images of countless plants and vegetation swirled around him, continuously merging with each other, continuously transforming. The bizarre signs that the disciples of the Bloodstream sect were seeing left them shocked. It was easy to imagine how, even as soon as the following day, Night Crypt's name would once again rock the Bloodstream sect. Even the other sects would surely hear about what was happening, and Night Crypt would become even more famous in the eastern lower reaches of the cultivation world. Night Crypt, Song Junwan murmured, rising to her feet. An expression of concern could be seen in her eyes as she looked at Bai Xiaochun. He was much thinner than he had been before, his face sunken in a bit, seemingly little more than flesh and bones. And yet, his eyes shone with brilliant light. He looked over at Song Junwan and nodded. Before she could say anything, he said, "I need to concoct some medicine." He needed to take the information that was sinking into his mind and apply it to medicine concocting as soon as possible, to firmly fix the sensation of the all-creation plants and vegetation technique into his heart. Under the eyes of all present, he flew into the air toward Middle Peak. Even the patriarchs on Ancestor Peak had expressions of anticipation on their faces as they watched him go. Back in his immortals cave, he immediately went into secluded meditation. He didn't have a lot of plants and vegetation on him at the moment, but it was without hesitation that he produced a pill furnace and began to concoct, not spirit medicine, but plants and vegetation pills. Through this process of concocting, he became much more confident in manipulating the plants and vegetation to produce specific levels of medicinal strength. The legacy branding in his mind grew deeper. He was so focused that he completely ignored matters like sleep and eating. At the same time, the exact effect he had hoped to produce within the sect could be seen. The Song clan patriarch arranged for large quantities of plants and vegetation to be delivered to him, along with piles of bloodflame stones. All of the resources of the bloodstream sect were being called upon to ensure that Bai Xiaochun quickly mastered the legacy he had received. Many of the medicinal plants he was given were very rare, and would fetch exorbitant prices on the outside, or even be the subject of fierce fighting. But now, it was without hesitation that the sect handed them over. They even sent over an apothecary attendant who respectfully said, "Grand Master, the Patriarch sent me to explain that this is only the first set of ingredients. More medicinal plants are on the way." Because of the steady flow of medicinal plants, Bai Xiaochun experienced no delays in his mastery of the legacy. As he concocted more plant and vegetation pills, his eyes shone with more intense light. At the same time, his skill in the Tao of medicine advanced by leaps and bounds. Bai Xiaochun was even delighted to discover that there were aspects of the frigid school medicine manual that he didn't understand before, but were now clear. In fact, there was an entire section on the first page that now made complete sense. "I have the feeling that I can finally concoct a Tier 4 medicinal pill. Maybe even Tier 5. Tier 4 medicinal pills were a dividing mark between journeyman apothecaries and master apothecaries. I must concoct medicine." Bai Xiaochun's eyes shone with intense focus. The enlightenment he had gained from the holy pill wall fragment, and the abstruse information from the frigid school medicine manual, caused his skill in the Tao of medicine to break through from the point of being able to concoct Tier 3 medicines. He was now fairly certain he could concoct Tier 4 medicines. In the eastern lower reaches of the cultivation world, Tier 4 spirit medicines were virtually priceless. Foundation establishment cultivators absolutely required them, the most obvious example being foundation establishment pills. Foundation establishment pills were Tier 4 spirit medicines and were very difficult to concoct. In fact, anyone who could successfully concoct them would be viewed as a master apothecary. Master apothecaries were rare. The bloodstream sect had been home to a few in the past, but not anymore. It was the same with the profound stream sect. Obviously, the pill stream sect had them, and in fact, they even had grandmaster apothecaries who were on a similar level as prime elders. Other than the master apothecaries in the pill stream sect, the only other one was in the spirit stream sect, and that was Li Qinghao. But now, Bai Xiaochun was at the peak of the Tier 3 level and was on the verge of breaking through to the Tier 4 level. Theoretically, the knowledge he possessed already gave him what he needed to break through. Taking a deep breath, he extended his right hand and opened the bag of holding that the sect had provided, which contained all sorts of plants and vegetation. Almost immediately, he gasped, and the more he studied the contents of the bag, the more shaken he was. "Is this dragon spirit root? I can't believe it's over 700 years old. This is peace devil leaf. More than 400 years old. Revelation fruit. Tao immortal blossom." It seemed like each of the medicinal plants he'd been given was more valuable than the one before it, and more rare. From the plants and vegetation he was being given, it was obvious how important the bloodstream sect viewed him to be. It actually exceeded his expectations. He couldn't help but feel a bit conflicted. On the one hand, the bloodstream sect really had treated him amazingly. On the other hand, he couldn't forget that he was from the spirit stream sect. Even as he wavered back and forth about what to do, he looked at the most recent delivery, which included 2 bags of holding. One of them contained pill furnaces, the other contained the bloodstream sect's unique bloodflame stones. Bloodflame stones were similar to the earth flame crystals from the spirit stream sect, except even more domineering. The intense heat they emitted was a necessity for medicine concocting, and although they were unique to the bloodstream sect, after some examination, Bai Xiaochun confirmed that they could produce 3-colored flame. Although he would have preferred fuel for 4-colored flame, 3-colored flame was still satisfactory. Finally, he made his decision. He would concoct pills, and secretly keep some of them for himself. As for the 4-leaf clovers he had harvested some time back, he still had them in his bag of holding. However, he didn't dare to use the turtle walk in the bloodstream sect, for fear of mishaps. After looking closer at the bag with the pill furnaces, Bai Xiaochun was even more shocked than he had been by all of the valuable medicinal plants. Eyes wide, he said, "How many pill furnaces are in here?" Mind reeling, he counted over 100 pill furnaces. There were large ones and small ones, new ones and old ones. The mere sight of them left Bai Xiaochun's vision swimming. There were even a few dozen pill furnaces which were clearly magical devices, and others contained strong medicinal aromas that indicated they had been frequently used by apothecaries in the past. Did they rob all of these? He thought, rubbing his eyes. After further examination, he realized that almost all of the pill furnaces were marked with a symbol like a cauldron, which was the sign of the pill stream sect. Obviously, these were pill furnaces that the bloodstream sect had robbed from pill stream sect disciples over the years. In addition to the pill furnaces, there were some jade slips in the bag of holding. After examining them, Bai Xiaochun's mind was yet again sent spinning. It actually took quite a while for him to recover. Those jade slips were clearly incredibly valuable. They were inscribed with countless medicine formulas. Some of them were even tier 5 formulas. Bai Xiaochun sighed emotionally, and his eyes shone with intense light. To have so many medicinal plants and so many pill furnaces right there in front of him left him completely excited. Rubbing his hands together, he immediately pulled out a pill furnace and some bloodflame stones. After igniting the stones with some spiritual power, a blood-colored flame lit the room. Concoct medicine. Must concoct medicine. He didn't start with the foundation establishment pill. Instead, he studied the formula for something called a spirit-tempering crystallizing pill, after which he began to concoct it. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, half a month went by. Bai Xiaochun never went outside even once, and soon his hair was completely disheveled. He was completely immersed within his medicine concocting. He failed over and over again as he built up experience and performed experiments. He pursued new trains of thought, and every time he came up with a new idea, he would laugh out loud with joy. As his laughter echoed out of the immortals' cave, the blood trees shivered, and any middle peak cultivators who happened to be passing by would be surprised, but mostly dismissive. Most of the cultivators on Middle Peak had some sort of beef with Bai Xiaochun, although none of them would ever dare to reveal that publicly. However, as time passed, all sorts of gossip spread. So what if he gained enlightenment of the wall fragment? Does he really think he's going to concoct some sort of amazing spirit medicine? HMPH. I heard that all of the plant and vegetation resources in the whole sect were sent over to Nightcrypt. He's just digging his own grave. He's going to fail completely, or at best concoct some ordinary spirit medicine. Either way, he's screwed. Who cares about medicine concocting? I don't even understand why the sect thinks it's important. However, Song Junwan and the 3 other Grand Elders, as well as the Prime Elders on Ancestor Peak, were filled with anticipation. Even the Song clan patriarch felt the same way, and was constantly looking over toward Middle Peak. 10 days passed. Bai Xiaochun's extended time in seclusion was being viewed with increasing derision by the Middle Peak cultivators. Of course, most of that was jealously. They were jealous of his relationship with the Grand Elder, jealous that the sect cared so much about him, and jealous that he was being gifted with so many plant and vegetation resources. However, his overall level of power was extraordinary, and everyone knew it. Because of the inverse blood ancestral awakening, he had already surpassed the power of Immortal Tao Foundation Establishment Dharma Protector. The Earthstring Foundation Establishment Elders were starting to feel threatened, and even the late Foundation Establishment experts were worried. Another 3 days passed. Bai Xiaochun had been working at medicine concocting for a full month straight. Inside his immortal's cave, he was working like mad, his eyes bloodshot as he paced back and forth around the pill furnace. He never stopped concocting. He would draw upon the plants and vegetation he had access to as he aimed for the medical strength he desired. Each time he failed, he would see new hope for success. This time I'm definitely going to succeed, he said hoarsely, licking his lips and staring at the pill furnace. Several more hours passed, and then the pill furnace began to tremble. A medicinal aroma spread out, and Bai Xiaochun's eyes shone with anticipation. Moments later, though, his excitement turned into fear. What's going on? He said, eyes widening. In the instant that the spirit medicine was supposed to emerge, the pill furnace suddenly began to heat up. Apparently, the strength of the pill was causing instability, which was affecting the pill furnace itself. Even the bloodflame stones were being influenced, which was causing the heat spike. Instantly, a sensation of intense danger filled Bai Xiaochun's heart. Cracking sounds rang out, and the pill furnace began to shake violently. Fissures spread out across its surface, which were filled with shining, blood-colored fire. From the look of things, the pill furnace was about to explode. A shocking force was building up inside, causing the pill furnace to bulge dramatically. It's gonna blow, he gasped, his scalp tingling. This was a Tier 4 spirit medicine, something far beyond Tier 2 or Tier 3 medicines. Even an exploding Tier 3 spirit medicine was completely shocking, but the idea of how much force the detonation of a Tier 4 spirit medicine would release caused Bai Xiaochun's pupils to constrict. From the aura that was emanating from the pill furnace, Bai Xiaochun could tell that it had force comparable to a Foundation Establishment cultivator. There was no time to sit around thinking about what to do. Shrieking, Bai Xiaochun reached out and grabbed the bulging furnace, then drew upon the full power of his cultivation base to burst outside and hurl it up into the air. "Everybody watch out," he cried at the top of his lungs. The pill furnace sailed up above Middle Peak, and then exploded, releasing a thunderous boom that shook heaven and earth. A shockwave also blasted out, sweeping over everything in sight. As the pill furnace exploded, medicinal dregs shot out in all directions. Even more terrifying was that the burning shrapnel created by the exploding furnace rained down in all directions. Countless Middle Peak disciples were badly frightened, and rushed out to see what was happening. "What's wrong? What happened? Is the spirit stream sect attacking us?" In their shock, they looked up and saw flames streaking through sky like falling stars to land in various locations around Middle Peak. As each bit slammed into the ground, booms echoed out. Soon, cries of alarm rose up into the air. Wherever the destroyed remnants of the pill furnace landed, flames rose up. There were even some unfortunate cultivators who caught on fire and began to scream at the tops of their lungs. All of Middle Peak was thrown into chaos. Song Junwan was shaken, and when she rushed out, she saw Middle Peak engulfed in flames. She could smell the acrid odor of a destroyed medicinal pill, and could also see the chunks of the pill furnace raining down. "Is this what happens when you concoct medicine?" she thought with a gasp. "I can't believe medicine concocting is so terrifying." In her mind, medicine concocting should be a calm, peaceful activity, and even if something went wrong, there shouldn't be a huge disaster like this. If disciples of the Spirit Stream sect were present, they would definitely understand what was happening, and would probably even feel bad for the Bloodstream sect and say, "Disaster strikes once sect Uncle Bai starts concocting medicine." Bai Xiaochun's heart was pounding with nervousness. The exploding pill furnace had not only been shocking, but also a very close call. If I had been just a bit slower, it would have blown up my immortals cave. But that's not the scariest part. I might have lost my poor little life. That would have been a tragedy. Bai Xiaochun ducked his head down, trying to look apologetic to the furious crowd around him. He quickly made some adjustments to the cave's spell formation, and then hurried back inside. There, he braced himself to face a mob, but after an entire day passed, nothing happened. Surprised, he waited even longer, but no one ever showed up. Weird. Oh well, I guess it doesn't matter. I'll just keep concocting. Now why did that pill furnace explode? Sitting down cross-legged, he rubbed his chin thoughtfully. What he didn't know was that the reason nobody came looking for him was because of how people called him Night Devil. He was already completely infamous, and although people wanted to go call him to account, the way he had slaughtered people with the blood sword left them no choice but to grit their teeth and endure. Another reason was that, although the explosion had been a powerful one, and caused a lot of fires, other than that, it didn't really influence anyone negatively. 3 days later, Bai Xiaochun slapped his thigh. In the past, my Tier 3 medicines also exploded. But this time, the explosion happened for a different reason. When Tier 4 spirit medicines are in the final stages of condensing into a pill, they absorb chi from their surroundings, which leads to instability. It doesn't have anything to do with the bloodflame stones. The pill is being destroyed from the inside out. Panting, hair in disarray, eyes shining with enlightenment, he quickly rolled up his sleeves and produced a new pill furnace to work with. The concocting process went much more quickly this time. A day later, and the spirit medicine was already taking form. As it did, he paid close attention, and was also fully prepared for any outcome. Suddenly, the pill furnace began to turn bright red, and cracks started to spread out across its surface. A violent eruption was obviously building up, and the pill furnace even began to bulge in shocking fashion, even more dramatically than last time. Bai Xiaochun gasped. Waving his sleeve, he collected up the pill furnace and then raced outside, where he threw it high up into the air. Unfortunately, he didn't have time to call out a warning this time. A deafening boom echoed out as the pill furnace exploded, sending shrapnel in all directions, along with waves of violet-colored flames. Booming thuds then rose up as the pieces landed on the ground. At the same time, enraged roars could be heard. Again? What are you doing, Nightcrypt? Nightcrypt, are you really concocting medicine? If you want to kill us, why not just fight us? What pill is he trying to concoct? There were about 10 cultivators who were directly affected, and despite their rage, they didn't do anything other than gnash their teeth. They didn't dare to cause any problems for Nightcrypt. Bai Xiaochun remained in his immortal's cave, terrified. However, after some time passed and nobody came to complain, he sighed and looked off into the distance. You people understand the situation, and choose not to cause problems for me. Don't worry, I promise this will be the last time. Taking a deep breath at how sincere he was in his efforts, he once again began to concoct. 3 days later. Damn it, what's wrong? Feeling like he was going insane, he rushed outside and threw the pill furnace up into the air. Boom. 5 days later. Boom. 7 days later. Boom. 10 days later. How could this be happening? He felt like he was going completely mad. This time, he threw an especially large pill furnace up into the air. Boom. During the 10 days that passed, Middle Peak was driven insane. Every day or two, another pill furnace would explode, raining down shrapnel and fire. Many places on Middle Peak were scorched to the ground. Many newly erected immortals' caves were burned to ash, and one cultivator after another was left screaming in rage. Eventually, not a single blade of grass or plant on Middle Peak was left unscorched. Although Master God Diviner's immortals' cave wasn't harmed, he did catch on fire at least once. The killing intent of the Middle Peak cultivators continued to build until it seemed like it might explode. The situation was a bit better on the upper finger. However, the fires eventually spread that far too, and the mid and late Foundation establishment cultivators there were slowly building up into a rage. All of Middle Peak was turning into a ticking time bomb. Nightcrypt, are you looking to die? If I don't kill Nightcrypt, then I'm not human. Damn it, does Nightcrypt want to burn Middle Peak to the ground? He's not concocting medicine, he's trying to kill us. The unusually large pill furnace that he threw up into the air didn't actually explode in until it landed. After it smashed into one of the blood waterfalls, a huge boom rang out, and masses of blood and water surged out in all directions. A miserable shriek rang out from Song Q's mouth as he emerged, engulfed in flames. His hair and eyebrows were almost immediately burned away. Nightcrypt, he howled, shooting toward Bai Xiaochun's immortals' cave. His actions caused the suppressed emotions of the other cultivators to erupt, and they joined him in shouting at the tops of their lungs. Kill Nightcrypt. If Nightcrypt doesn't die, then we'll all be killed. First he messed with the blood chi, then he chased that rabbit, and now he has these exploding furnaces. Nightcrypt is a walking disaster. You're dead, Nightcrypt. You destroyed my immortal's cave during the blood chi incident, then again because of the rabbit, and now again with a pill furnace. Never before had the cultivators of Middle Peak been united in such a way. 90% of the cultivators, from early to late Foundation establishment, raged with murderous auras as they shot toward Bai Xiaochun's immortal's cave, intent on joining hands to destroy it. Even if the sect prohibited such action, they didn't care. They were convinced that the sect wouldn't cause problems for all of the Foundation establishment cultivators on Middle Peak because of a single person. When Bai Xiaochun saw what was happening, his scalp began to tingle with fear. Even though he was already in the mid-Foundation establishment stage, and was sure he could easily crush even a large group of opponents, it was a shock to see so many Foundation establishment cultivators racing toward him, including both Mortal Dao and Earthstring types, from the early to the late stage, all of them bristling with killing intent, and many without any hair or eyebrows. Song Ke was leading them all, a pack of hornets whose howls shook the mountain peak like thunder. Listen to me, people. Bai Xiaochun cried, face ashen from fear. Backing up, he tried to offer explanations, but his voice was drowned out by the howls of rage. As the people closed in, their cultivation bases surging with shocking power, they became like a wave of rage, upon which the rowboat which was Bai Xiaochun teetered on the verge of death. That was when a cold snort echoed from Ancestor Peak, a snort filled with frigid iciness. It pierced into the maddened minds of the mob, and all the cultivators who had been planning to attack Bai Xiaochun were instantly shaken to their souls. Only a prime elder or a patriarch would be able to calm down such a large group of people so quickly. It didn't matter who it was that had just snorted, it left everyone shaking. Simultaneously, Grand Elder Song Junwan appeared in front of Bai Xiaochun. Looking around coldly at the group of cultivators, she frowned and said, "Enough is enough. Nightcrypt didn't do any of this on purpose. It's hard to avoid accidents when concocting medicine." The surrounding Foundation establishment cultivators could say nothing in response. However, despite the fact that they feared and respected the Grand Elder, they were haughty and arrogant people by nature, and inwardly, were still just as angry as before. Even their eyes radiated a brutal coldness. The Patriarch agrees on this point. Song Junwan continued coolly, her eyes radiating cold light. When the Foundation establishment cultivators heard that, they had no choice but to sigh bitterly. Biting their tongues, they turned to leave. Of course, their hatred for Bai Xiaochun still burned hot inside of them. All of them were thinking the same thing: you can't keep this up. The Patriarch's patience has a limit, and sooner or later, you'll meet a bitter end. Inwardly, they chuckled coldly, filled with expectation for the day that Nightcrypt would be punished by the sect. After the crowd dispersed, fear still lingered in Bai Xiaochun's heart. Looking over at Song Junwan, he slapped his chest and said, "Those people were being so unreasonable. I'm concocting medicine for the sect. Song Junwan, who had already been turning to leave, looked back at Bai Xiaochun with a strange expression on her face. Then she shook her head. Even she would never have been able to imagine that pill concocting could prove to be so dangerous. After a moment of hesitation, she said, Night Crypt, you had better end up concocting a pill that pleases the patriarch. With that, she gave him a deep look, and then left. She didn't want to go into any more detail than that. She was sure that Night Crypt would understand her meaning. The leadership of the Bloodstream sect cared about the result, not the process. If, in the end, Night Crypt was able to concoct a pill that pleased the patriarch, then everything that happened along the way wouldn't matter. As long as he didn't go too far, they wouldn't just ignore the mishaps, they would shield him from the consequences. However, if he failed to produce a satisfactory medicinal pill, then he would be viewed as useless, and the sect would demand restitution. Essentially, the more useful he was, the more they would use him, and the more powerful he would be in the sect. Bai Xiaochun's eyes flickered. Naturally, he understood what was going on. He had come to understand the way the Bloodstream sect did things way back on Corpse Peak. They look at the result, not the process. He sighed. What a great sect. Coughing dryly, he returned to his Immortals cave and continued concocting. Back on Ancestor Peak, the Song clan patriarch was sitting in a large hall. Looking away from Middle Peak, he smiled at the two prime elders who were there to accompany him. All of them seemed quite pleased. Aren't Night Crypt's concocting methods a bit excessive? One of the prime elders said with the shake of a head. The other prime elder chuckled. Sounding a bit sarcastic, he said, that's what Bloodstream sect disciples are supposed to be like. Don't concoct pills like everyone else. You can see at a single glance that he walks a devilish path. Everyone else concocts pills as if they're drinking warm water. He concocts them with explosive flair. 10 days passed. On 2 occasions, pill furnaces exploded, but there was nothing Bai Xiaochun could do about it. Reducing the medicinal strength seemed to be the only option. As far as Bai Xiaochun was concerned, these pill furnaces were simply too weak. After reducing the medicinal strength, and utilizing the all-creation plants and vegetation technique, he was gradually able to stabilize things, and in the end, managed to successfully concoct a batch of Tier 4 spirit-tempering crystallizing pills. Although only 5 pills came out, and they were all low-grade, they still contained far more spiritual energy than any other spirit medicine that Bai Xiaochun had concocted in the past. He could even feel the spiritual energy pulsing inside of them when he held them in his hand. They almost seemed intelligent. That was one of the unique characteristics of Tier 4 medicinal pills. After examining them closely for a bit, Bai Xiaochun started to get even more excited than before. Although he was confident that a pill like this would please a prime elder, it probably wouldn't be good enough for the Song clan patriarch. I need to increase my success rate significantly. Then the Song clan patriarch will definitely be convinced. Sticking his chin up proudly, he continued concocting with the techniques he had already perfected to some degree. He wanted more control over Tier 4 spirit medicine, and a higher success rate, similar to what he had with Tier 3 spirit medicines. It was with complete focus that Bai Xiaochun proceeded to ignore the outside world, and immerse himself in the Tao of medicine. Next, he selected another classic Tier 4 spirit medicine formula, Misty Spirit Incense. A few days later, a fragrant aroma rose up from the new batch of spirit medicine, and Bai Xiaochun's eyes immediately began to shine. His right hand flashed with an incantation gesture, and the pill furnace opened, causing a stream of green smoke to rise up into the air. Huh? What shocked Bai Xiaochun most wasn't the green smoke, it was the fact that no spirit medicine could be seen inside. What went wrong? He thought, shocked. He inspected the pill furnace carefully, but there was nothing inside, not even any medicinal dregs. It was almost as if the spirit medicine in the pill furnace had vanished into thin air. Thinking about the smoke, he looked around the Immortals cave, but didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Frowning, he started working on another batch, determined to identify the source of the problem. The same thing happened with the next batch. It turned into green smoke again. Green smoke rose up, and within a few breaths of time, had completely vanished. No matter how he tried to capture it or prevent it from dissipating, it faded away. Interesting. Every Tier 4 spirit medicine seems to have a unique property to it. He wasn't discouraged. Quite the contrary. For the following month, he tried numerous methods to solve the problem. However, the dozen or so batches he completed during that time all resulted in a green smoke which quickly faded away. As Bai Xiaochun continued his research and study into the Misty Spirit Incense, the cultivators of Middle Peak were finally awakening from the nightmare that had been the exploding pill furnaces. However, before they even had a chance to rejoice, they found themselves sinking into another nightmare. The first cultivator to be struck with misfortune was Master God Diviner. About 10 days before, in the middle of the night, he had been performing an augury for someone when suddenly his face fell. To the surprise of the cultivator sitting in front of him, Master God Diviner rushed out of the room, face bright red. That night, he felt like he was about to fall to pieces. The following morning at dawn, his face was ashen. What's going on? I haven't eaten food for more than 10 years. How could I be having diarrhea? Clutching his abdomen, he tried to perform a divination, but before he could finish, a growling sound echoed out from inside of him. Soon, one cultivator after another was affected. Regardless of whether they were in their immortals' caves or not, anyone on Middle Peak who breathed in the aura caused by the green smoke would be stricken with diarrhea. It didn't matter when or where they were. If it were an ordinary case of diarrhea, it might not have been a big deal. However, days passed, and the situation only continued to worsen. The ones who had it best off only ended up visiting the restroom 10 or more times per day, but for others, it was over 100. The cultivators of Middle Peak were starting to go crazy, and couldn't even imagine what sort of poison could be causing the situation. Some of the Foundation establishment cultivators couldn't handle it, and began to collapse unconscious. Someone's poisoned us, damn it, what exactly is going on? This couldn't be Night Crypt, could it? A plague of diarrhea had struck the lower finger of Middle Peak. There was an invisible poison mist that seemed to affect any cultivator who encountered it, regardless of the level of their cultivation base. Soon, Middle Peak was virtually a ghost town. Everyone was on the verge of going completely insane, and yet barely had the energy to move. Unfortunately, it wasn't a problem that simply went away after a short time passed. Song Ke lay prone, listless and weak. He had visited the restroom so many times that by this point, he almost felt like a mortal. What's happening? People moaned. It must be Night Crypt. He's concocting medicine, and the aura is spreading out and doing this to us. More and more people began to come to the same conclusion. However, no one could even go to investigate. The diarrhea had gotten so bad that most people couldn't even leave their immortals' caves. Soon, the upper finger was being affected. Song Junwan simply left, shaking in fear at the thought of medicine concocting. Just what kind of concocting is he doing? She sighed, looking down sympathetically at Middle Peak. How could it be so terrifying? Eventually, word spread to the other 3 mountain peaks, and the cultivators there began to laugh and joke about the matter. Some of them went over to the vicinity of Middle Peak to investigate for themselves, but they quickly returned and went into secluded meditation. Eventually, the cultivators of Middle Peak began to leave. Unfortunately, they could only crawl, so that was how they made their escape. They crawled slowly away, unwilling to remain behind any longer. Sadly, they had been severely poisoned, so even after leaving, the symptoms lingered. Everyone teetered on the verge of collapse, glaring in terror at Bai Xiaochun's immortals' cave. If they had to choose between this and exploding furnaces, they would pick the furnaces. Night Crypt is so vicious. He's definitely getting revenge on us. Damn it, we shouldn't call him Night Devil, we should call him Plague Devil. Night Crypt the Plague Devil. As time passed, and the Foundation establishment cultivators simmered in suffering, their hatred for Bai Xiaochun dissipated. Most of them resolved that in the future, they would do anything possible to avoid provoking him. He was truly a terrifying figure, and his tactics of cutting down his enemies with invisible medicinal pills was truly mind-numbing. Furthermore, quite a few cultivators changed their mind about the Tao of medicine, and decided that they should spend more time studying it. Even Ancestor Peak took note of what was happening. Of course, Bai Xiaochun had no idea what was going on. Because he cultivated the undying live forever technique, he wasn't affected at all, and was completely consumed in the Tao of medicine. A month later, he finally solved the problem of the green smoke, and succeeded in concocting the misty spirit incense. Then he went on to concoct some other Tier 4 spirit medicines. Eventually, he raised his success rate to 70%. By that point, he had run out of medicinal plants, and was forced to take a break. Spirit medicine in hand, he sighed and walked out of the immortals' cave. It was a bright, sunny morning, but for some reason, everything seemed unusually quiet. Bai Xiaochun looked around and found that Middle Peak was completely empty. At first he was shocked, but then he was pleased. He had finally managed to concoct some medicine without affecting people in the area. Sighing again, he began to walk along through Middle Peak. Before long though, he started to get nervous. Why is it so quiet? He thought. Something seemed off. By the time he reached the bottom of the mountain, he hadn't seen a single person, or even detected any signs of life. All of the immortals' caves seemed empty. Where is everyone? Blinking, he started to get even more nervous, and then picked up his pace. Soon, he caught sight of one of the Middle Peak Foundation establishment cultivators, hobbling along with the help of 2 inner sect disciples. When the cultivator looked up and saw Bai Xiaochun, a tremor ran through him, and his eyes widened as if with fear as he raised a trembling finger to point at Bai Xiaochun. Are you finished concocting? He asked. Huh? Bai Xiaochun replied, a bit confused. Yeah, I'm finished. As soon as the words left his mouth, the cultivator shivered, then turned toward the inner sect district and yelled as loud as he could. You can all come out now. Let's go back to our immortals' caves. Plague Devil is finished concocting medicine. Soon, cries of relief rang out from numerous immortals' caves in the inner sect as countless figures appeared, supported by inner sect disciples. They all looked gaunt and sallow, their expressions simultaneously listless and excited. Are you serious? Plague Devil finally finished with his medicine concocting? The heavens do have eyes. We can finally go back to Middle Peak. Song Ke was in the crowd, his legs trembling as he glared at Bai Xiaochun. He was unlike the rest of the crowd, he had not been cowed into fear, and still wanted to kill Nightcrypt. Bai Xiaochun scratched his head guiltily as the crowds of inner sect disciples helped the Foundation establishment cultivators on their way back to Middle Peak. For the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he watched hundreds of people passing him. Then Song Junwan flew by overhead, and then circled around to land in front of him, mixed emotions on her face. Big sis Song, he said carefully. Finished concocting? She asked with a wry smile. Give me the spirit medicine, I'll take it to the patriarch. Bai Xiaochun quickly pulled 5 tier 4 spirit medicines out of his bag of holding. They were only a portion of what he had concocted. The rest he kept to himself, naturally. Song Junwan accepted them, and after examining them briefly, was clearly moved. She gave Bai Xiaochun a deep look, then smiled. Telling him to wait for her, she flew toward the top of Middle Peak. Bai Xiaochun was already feeling very nervous. He knew the rules in the Bloodstream Sect. Although he was confident that he had done enough to impress the leadership of the Bloodstream Sect, he was still a bit anxious. He waited for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, whereupon Song Junwan returned. A strange look could be seen in her eyes as she handed him a command medallion, then lifted his chin with her finger. Her breath smelled like orchids as she said, the Patriarch wanted me to tell you that from now, as long as you don't betray the sect, you will be treated like a direct descendant of the Song clan. Bai Xiaochun's eyes sparkled at the thought of being to do virtually anything he wished in the sect. Feeling extremely proud of himself, he looked back at the lovely Grand Elder, and then reached out and lifted her chin with his finger. Does this count as betraying the sect? He said with a chuckle. Song Junwan's eyes went wide. In all her life, she had never encountered anyone who dared to flirt with her in such a way. She instantly blushed, but then her eyes flickered with cold light. It seems I need to teach a bit about why Grand Elders are supposed to be respected. The command medallion was a gift from the Song clan patriarch, and was a guarantee that as long as he didn't betray the sect, he could do virtually anything he wanted in the sect. He could even kill people with impunity. Unfortunately, it was useless when dealing with Song Junwan. It didn't matter that he was in mid-foundation establishment, there was no way he was a match for someone like her, a top expert who was on the verge of reaching core formation. Of course, Song Junwan didn't attack him, she merely glared at him for a moment before turning and leaving. Over the course of the following days, news about Nightcrypt successfully concocting a Tier 4 spirit medicine spread throughout the entire Bloodstream Sect. Everyone, Prime Elders included, heard about the matter. Even the Blood Rippers, who were almost always in secluded meditation, caught wind of the name of Nightcrypt. It was the same with the rest of the patriarchs. The Song clan patriarch seemed to take him especially seriously, and his attitude determined the attitude of the Song clan. Of course, the Song clan was a major force in the Bloodstream Sect, with roots that ran very deep. Eventually, news about Nightcrypt and his medicine concocting leaked out of the sect to the cultivator clans. Word even reached the Spirit Stream Sect. Hu Yunfei and Bai Xiaochun's other friends were all struck speechless. Some of them couldn't help but think of Bai Xiaochun, but the idea that the two of them were connected seemed so preposterous that they quickly dismissed such notions. Either way, the stories about Nightcrypt caused the other sects to view him as an even more important person in the Bloodstream Sect. Some people even placed him on the same level as Song Ke. Of course, in the Bloodstream Sect, things were different. A lot of people already viewed Song Ke as being inferior to Nightcrypt. Not only did Nightcrypt have terrifying battle prowess, he was also brutal, vicious, and had a devilish way of concocting medicine. Few people dared to even approach him. The fact that a pestilence of diarrhea had struck an entire mountain caused countless hearts to be struck with even more fear than before. His nickname soon changed from Night Devil to Plague Devil. The mere idea of how he would cut people down without even shedding blood was terrifying. Bai Xiaochun actually enjoyed the change in attitude. Most of the cultivators on Middle Peak were dead set on avoiding him at all costs. None were willing to provoke him, and although some still resented him, no major issues arose. As for the inner sect disciples, they thought of him as some sort of vicious wild beast. The mere thought of him would cause their legs to go weak, and based on the stories that circulated among them, he was the type of person who could wipe out an entire mountain peak if he wanted. However, Bai Xiaochun's life only went smoothly for a few days. Calling upon her authority as the Grand Elder of Middle Peak, Song Junwan issued a whole series of orders to him. She had him sweep all of the paths on Middle Peak, had him go repair all of the destroyed immortals' caves, and told him to do other similar things. She found plenty of ways to control Bai Xiaochun, to the point where he was left scowling on the verge of tears. So I slipped up one little time. Bai Xiaochun huffed. Just when he was finishing sweeping Middle Peak, he got another order from Song Junwan. He was now to scrub all garbage receptacles on Middle Peak. I can't believe she's being such a bully. How come she can make a pass at me, but I can't do the same thing back? Bai Xiaochun was brimming with anger. How could he go around scrubbing garbage receptacles, considering his status in the sect? It was at around that moment that a beam of light appeared off in the distance, which circled around and headed toward Bai Xiaochun. When he looked up, he realized it was the Grand Elder of Corpse Peak. "Hey there, Night Crypt, old boy," the Grand Elder said, laughing heartily. Landing near Bai Xiaochun, he walked over and saw the broom Bai Xiaochun was holding. Eyes glittering, he said, "Being punished? I can't believe you actually dared to make a pass at Song Junwan." Although he was the Grand Elder of Corpse Peak, he knew that Night Crypt was an extraordinary person who would likely become a patriarch. He had virtually limitless potential, and was also haughty and arrogant. Therefore, the Grand Elder had long since come to view him as a cultivator of the same generation as himself. "Yeah, so what?" Bai Xiaochun replied, glaring and sticking his chin up. "She made a pass at me first." The Grand Elder looked around carefully, then lowered his voice and said, "Night Crypt, old boy, you listen to me. Do you know what kind of person Song Junwan is? She's a damned scorpion, that's what. Of all the guys who have dared to provoke her over the years, not a single one met a good end. In fact, years ago, when she was in the chi condensation stage, I personally witnessed how she dealt with someone who treated her improperly. She gutted him alive." "Gutted him alive?" Bai Xiaochun asked, gasping. The Grand Elder looked around furtively for a moment before continuing, "Did you ever hear about Blood Master Situ Hao from Lesser Marsh Peak? A few years ago, he harbored malicious intentions toward Song Junwan. She chased him all the way to Nameless Peak, and almost managed to gut him too." "She guts Blood Masters?" Bai Xiaochun felt his scalp tingling like mad. He knew that in the Bloodstream sect, Blood Masters occupied a very high position, similar to the sect leader. In fact, in some ways, they were even more powerful than the sect leader. The sect leader couldn't directly issue orders to the cultivators of a mountain peak, but a Blood Master could. Furthermore, only by reaching core formation and becoming a Blood Master could someone ever have a chance of becoming a Blood Ripper. Blood Rippers were the most important force in the sect next to the Patriarchs. For various reasons, Blood Masters were people who could drive countless other members of the sect into madness. Bai Xiaochun was more nervous than ever. After glancing up at the upper finger, he looked back at the Corpse Peak Grand Elder and said, "What are you doing here anyway? Trying to scare me?" "Why would I want to scare you, Night Crypt, old boy?" he replied, smiling broadly. "I'm just telling you the facts. Hey, we've been friends since your days in the inner sect, haven't we? Such good friends. In fact, I even went to the sect leader and asked if it would be alright to invite you to Corpse Peak to concoct some medicine. If you do, then you won't have to follow any orders from that ogress Song Junwan, right? How about this? Take as much time to think it over as you need. Don't worry, I'll provide you with all the medicinal ingredients. Actually, they've already been prepared. After you're finished, you'll have my profound thanks." "Oh, right. The Corpse Peak Blood Master said that if you agree to concoct medicine for us, he'll give you that emerald zombie you refined as a gift." The Corpse Peak Grand Elder slapped his bag of holding and produced a command medallion, which was none other than the device to control the emerald zombie. Bai Xiaochun looked at it and confirmed that it was the very control device which he had handed over, the one that controlled the emerald zombie. Of course, if he wanted to, he could invalidate the command medallion with a mere thought at any time. However, the idea of concocting medicine at Corpse Peak to evade the punishments of Song Junwan seemed like a wonderful idea. He didn't agree right away though. Instead, he put a hesitant expression onto his face. You know, he said with a wince, whenever I concoct medicine, fellow sect members often suffer. I'll personally kill anyone who complains, the Grand Elder responded immediately. Night Crypt, old boy, rest at ease and concoct to your heart's content. As long as you can make me a tier 4 inverse blood corpse refining pill, then anything goes. Bai Xiaochun cleared his throat. He was about to continue to play hard to get when suddenly, a cold snort echoed out from the upper finger. Night Crypt, why haven't you started scrubbing yet? And then there's you, old fogey. What are you doing off of Corpse Peak? Why are you always interfering in my business on Middle Peak? It was none other than Song Junwan. As soon as her voice rang out, Bai Xiaochun grabbed the arm of the Corpse Peak Grand Elder. I agree. When do we leave? Now, replied the Grand Elder, elated. Throwing his head back and laughing uproariously, he unleashed the power of his cultivation base, taking Bai Xiaochun with him as he shot toward Corpse Peak in a beam of light. At first, Song Junwan's jaw dropped in shock. But then a strange fire began to rage in her heart, and she flew out to block the path of the Corpse Peak Grand Elder. Where do you think you're going, Night Crypt? However, it was at that very moment that a blood-colored beam of light shot out from Corpse Peak. It was a middle-aged man with a mane of blood-colored hair, wearing a long, blood-colored robe. Even his skin was the color of blood, and eyes shone with piercing light. Clearly, he had a Foundation establishment cultivation base, and yet he emanated an energy that was no weaker than that of a Prime Elder. A single step put him directly in front of Song Junwan. Junwan, junior brother Night Crypt is a famous person in the sect. Even the patriarchs like him. It's fundamentally wrong to force him to do such menial, humiliating tasks. Junior brother Night Crypt has agreed to come to Corpse Peak to concoct medicine, so just calm down, we won't treat him badly. The man waved his right hand, and Corpse Peak trembled, as though it were resonating with him. At the same time, incredible pressure weighed down in all directions. Windcliff, I don't care if you're the Blood Master of Corpse Peak, what gives you the right to interfere in Middle Peak's affairs? Song Junwan's eyes flickered with killing intent as she stared at the blood-colored figure, who was none other than Bloodmaster Windcliff from Corpse Peak. I'm not a useless piece of crap like Situ Hao. You're not getting past me. Windcliff took another step forward to block her path while the Grand Elder sped along toward Corpse Peak with Bai Xiaochun in tow. Night Crypt, come back home this instant. Song Junwan shouted lividly. Seeing that Song Junwan's path had been obstructed, and knowing that he was now safe, Bai Xiaochun shook his head vigorously and shot back, I'm not going back, no matter what you say. Are you coming or not? She cried, stamping her foot in fury. Not, he retorted with another shake of the head. Oh, look at you, Night Crypt. Think you're tough stuff now, huh? If you don't come back this instant, then you can forget about ever coming back. With that, she turned angrily and headed back toward Middle Peak. Fine, Bai Xiaochun said with an angry snort. I'm never going back. Then he turned and headed toward Corpse Peak. By this point, the Grand Elder was sweating as he looked first at Bai Xiaochun, and then back at the equally furious Song Junwan. You too, he said hesitantly, starting to wonder exactly what had gone on between them. The exchange that had just gone on left the Corpse Peak Grand Elder, as well as Bloodmaster Windcliff, blinking in shock. Something about the whole conversation seemed a bit off. They weren't the only ones to have such a reaction. Any other cultivator who heard their argument couldn't shake the feeling that they were hearing a fight between a husband and wife. It was like a husband angrily storming out of the house and the wife cursing him the entire way. Note from Deathblade. Since I always tend to get confusion when I include the notes from Urgen, I want to make clear that the following note is from Urgen, when the chapter was originally released. Note from Urgen. This chapter is coming out on Chinese Valentine's Day. I hope that all fellow Taoists have someone who will say, Dear, come back home with me. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.